There's a wide range of belief systems. I don't suspect there's many down here. And I put debunkers versus skeptics, and I think everybody understands that. Up through, do UFOs exist? And we have crashes, land them, reverse engineering, and finally, aliens are among us. So I'm going to address many of those. One of the first things I take on, in fact, I have a whole chapter on the Condon report. It's kind of interesting because actually Condon was right. Because the question to Condon was not, are there UFOs? It was, are they a threat? And we haven't had an invasion, so I don't know. That said, if you read the body of the report, not that bad, it's pretty good. But the problem is Condon himself did the summary and conclusions, were pre-gone conclusions. Well, the biggest problem with this is that the impact that has had on other folks. Now, the Air Force got what they wanted. What they wanted was to pass an action. An action passed is an action handled. And of course, one of what's problem is right here, the scientific community assumes that this was a deep, serious study. Reality is it wasn't that good, and it's certainly, you see the conclusions are even inconsistent with the body of the report. But the impact that this has had on other scientists and scientists getting involved is just really significant. Steve, are you here? This doesn't show up very well. This was actually taken at the X conference when Steve Bassett and I were in a debate, photoshopped and that. But the point is, in my view, UFOs are not the greatest story ever told. And we keep hearing about, we want disclosure, and I argue, you know, frankly, disclosure has happened. And they say, well, why don't we hear from the White House pontificate? Well, you have. I'll go through these kind of quickly. You've got, starting with Truman, saying, you know, this is a real thing. Here's another one with the Twining memo that came out about the same time. Said this is not a hallucination or visionary. These are real. Started out as a classified paper, but later made public. Reagan saw them. He was on an airplane, went out and chased them, and also spoke to it. Not just American presidents. Gorbachev has come out and made a statement that says UFOs do exist and are real. You get into the military. Lord Hill Norton, many of you know the writings that he's had, said the same thing. Basically, the evidence is pretty much overwhelming that there is something real going on. Now, De Brouwer, and in several of the books, you know, he was a lieutenant colonel, was out actually chasing UFOs, really a fantastic case. Went on to become the deputy chief of Air Force of the Belgian Air Force, and the same thing. You know, they find that basically UFOs are real. This is my friend, some of you heard Coast to Coast the other night, it was on with George Knapp. This is General Maltsev saying, you know, skeptics can take this as official confirmation of the existence of UFOs. What is so amazing about that statement, and that one really is different, is that Maltsev's predecessor was fired when a young German flew a Cessna and landed near a Red Square. Okay? So the guy gets fired, predecessor fired for letting a Cessna in, and here his successor comes in and says, these things are flying around and, you know, not much we can do about that. Same thing with his boss. There's a Russian four-star general coming out and saying, phenomenon is real. The Duke of Edinburgh, same thing. There are many reasons to believe that the UFOs are real. Get into space. Herman Oberth, who's known as kind of the father of spaceflight. Same sorts of things, coming up with a statement that says, I've examined the arguments for flying saucers. The conclusion is that they do exist. We get into religion. We'll talk about religion a little bit more. But the same thing, here you have the Vatican coming out and saying, yep, you know, we have no problem with extraterrestrial entities out there in UFOs. So my point is this, you know, how many of these things do we have to have before people say, oh, yeah, they have had disclosure?